Hello and welcome everybody to today's edition of Mexico News Network's The Travel Insider. My name is Sofia Rattinger and joining me is financial analyst Mr. Elliot Bullman. Elliot, how are you?
Great, Sofia, and how are you?
Fine, thank you.
And welcome everybody. We've got a great show lined up for you today, but before we start, remember to check out all our social networks, Facebook, Twitter and Google+, and log on to our network, mexiconetwork.com, for relevant stories and news. Let's start with today's show.
From October to December, some of the most important cultural festivals in Mexico take place. Such is the case of the 44th edition of the International Cervantine Festival. And of course, along with the parties and celebrations come the tourists. Traditional festivities celebrating the cultural identity of a place are today's tourism mecca.
That's right, most people no longer look to be only pampered or to party hard. Tourists nowadays like to be immersed in the culture of the place they're visiting, and the government and touristic industry know it. This year's Cervantine Festival was granted a budget of over 132 million pesos, and the event is expected to surpass last year's attendance by 16%.
So we're talking about approximately 517,000 visitors delivering an economic income worth over 417 million pesos. Even though over the years the permanence of the festival has been questioned by some people, it is still going strong. As a symbol of international cooperation, every year a country appears at the festival as an honored cultural guest.
However, the economic downturn affected this year's festival, which operated with 15 million pesos less than last year. According to Jorge Volpe, General Director of the Cervantine Festival, from their total budget of 132 million, only 97 million pesos came from the new Secretariat of Culture. So the government of Guanajuato, the state responsible for the festival, had to make up for the rest.
The good news is that against the economic odds, cultural tourism prevails in our country. At the announcement of the 30th edition of the Zacatecas Cultural Festival, the Subsecretary of Planning and Touristic Policy of the National Secretariat of Tourism, Salvador Sanchez Estrada, recognized that Mexico is living a transformation through its cultural expressions.
Meanwhile, the Tourism Secretary of Zacatecas, Pedro Injuanzo Gonzalez, mentioned that this edition of the state's cultural festival will raise hotel occupancy to 70%, with over 60,000 tourists, which represents a very important growth for tourism in this small state. I highly recommend for tourists to come to Mexico for these festivals because they celebrate hundreds of years of folkloric dance, traditions, opera, ballet. Amazing.
Yeah. And talking about the Cervantine, this festival took place every year, takes place every year in Guanajuato, in the state of Guanajuato, and it's a colonial state and it's very, very beautiful. Yeah, it has a lot of history.
Yeah, it does, and it's not just the university, but the ancient underground tunnels there, right?
Yeah.
That fascinate tourists. It's really worth visiting.
And very romantic places. It has a lot of romantic places.
What is it? The Callejón del
Beso?
Oh, yeah.
The Kiss Alley, you can say, the Kiss Alley in English.
Sounds like very Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, very Romeo and Juliet, yes. All in all, Mexico is one of the countries with greatest cultural tourism in the world. Its cultural, geographic, and historic richness can only be appreciated through a trip to its touristic destinations, its gastronomy, architecture, and traditions, all which shapes the essence of a people. But what exactly is cultural tourism, Elliot?
Well, Sophia, cultural tourism can be defined as any touristic journey driven by the objective to know, understand, and enjoy any set of traits and distinctive elements, be it spiritual, material, intellectual, or affective, that characterize a society or social group of a specific destination.
Okay, so tourists with a particular interest in culture fall into the cultural tourism segment, right? And the worth of this segment on each country depends directly on the cultural values of said country and how they manage to make them attractive for tourists. For its numerous World Heritage sites and traditions declared by UNESCO, Mexico occupies the 6th place in cultural tourism affluence, only behind Italy, China, Spain, Germany, and France.
Yes, and that's why during the inauguration of the 5th National Forum of Tourism and Culture, Sanchez Estrada, the Subsecretary of Planning and Touristic Policy, stated that a greater drive in cultural tourism is paramount to the success of transforming the living conditions of the receiving communities.
Now the aim is to create a unique experiences to connect visitors with World Heritage sites. According to what the subsecretary said, under the vision, the expertise of guides and cultural sponsors is promoted, as well as the design of refinement of advertising strategies.
So far, the country is on the right track with this. The Secretary of Tourism invested directly 2.3 billion pesos to support 329 cultural tourism projects. This investment represents almost 60% of the total federal budget destined for the tourism sector throughout the country. And here's some fun data. Did you know that in 2015, about 1 million people visited at least one of the 87 certified archaeological sites?
Wow.
Plus, I think it was like 7.3 million tourists visited over 1,000 museums here in the country.
Yeah, and without a doubt, every year and every day, people fall in love with Mexico, with all its cultural heritage and its history and its stories. Also, the tales and all the myths around Mexico. We have a lot of things here in Mexico.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just beautiful beaches and biodiversity. It just dates way back, doesn't it? Into literature, art, music, festivals.
We can have all kind of tourism here in this country.
We got it all.
And another major cultural attraction in Mexico is our celebration of Dia de Muertos, or Day of the Dead. During the Day of the Dead celebration, destinations like Mexico City, San Luis Potosí, Quintana Roo, Yucatan, or Michoacán expect the visit of not only their departed loved ones, but also of thousands of travelers who arrive to enjoy the festivities and traditions that are displayed during this holiday.
According to the Confederation of the National Chambers of Commerce, Services and Tourism, this holiday receives revenue in excess of 2.2 billion pesos throughout the country. This is a prime example of how positive results are obtained when culture and tradition are harnessed as a touristic attraction. Now, speaking about that, next week we're going to see the Day of the Dead Festival in Mexico City.
Yeah.
Remember, there's been a lot of preparation since the big movie last year.
I already
right?
bought all the things for I'm going to build my, how do you say, the altar in English.
Okay, the shrine?
Yeah, and put some pictures of our loved ones, and it's a beautiful tradition. It is a beautiful tradition.
It's a wonderful remembrance, right?
Yes,
and,
yes.
And it's something we last for 2 to 3 days, right, with the whole family, and very different to anything I've ever witnessed around the world, something unique to Mexico.
Yeah. You need to visit Mexico. Yes. Since the premiere of the 007 film, the Mexico City government expressed interest in making a similar parade as the one that appears in the first sequence of the movie. Even though the Day of the Dead tradition is celebrated every year, we have never had something like was presented in the blockbuster.
Yeah, I'm really pumped about this. The parade is expected to be a great success and therefore become an important tradition in Mexico City. So from now on, we look forward to attract hundreds of tourists to be part of this tribute every year and become part of one of the most representative traditions of Mexico.
Mexico is a country overflowing with culture, traditions, and history. So meet the vast offer of archaeological sites, be amazed by Tulum, Chichen Itza, Palenque, or Monte Albán, which are recognized by UNESCO as World Heritage Sites.
Or enjoy the crafts produced in some of the cities in Mexico where the traditional crafting process has remained intact for centuries, a knowledge transmitted from generation to generation. Admire the black pottery art in Oaxaca, the refined musical instruments in Paracho, Michoacán, the leather artwork in Guanajuato, and the colorful masterpiece of the indigenous groups like the Huicholes. Mexico is truly a cultural tourism mecca.
Without a doubt. Oh yeah, we have a lot of things. Well, this was all for today. Thank you for staying with us. It was a pleasure. My name is Sofia Rattinger.
Thanks for being with us. I'm Elliot Bullman. And remember to follow us on all our social networks, Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, and catch us on our website, mexiconewsnetwork.com, for relevant stories about Mexico and the world. Until next time.